No thank you for your service. No explanation. Just a surgical cut. My name's Alex Grant. I'm 54 years old. Until that Monday morning, I was Senior Systems Analyst at Norbridge Solutions in Des Moines, Iowa. Nearly 2 decades of my life had been poured into that place. I'd been there from the days of dial-up to the dawn of cloud computing. I'd watched 3 CEOs come and go while I stayed quietly holding everything together, training every new hire, recovering every corrupt file, working through holidays weekends, even a Christmas Eve once, all without ever asking for a raise or recognition. So when Daniel, the current CTO, called me into his office with Sophia from HR already seated, I already knew. Something had changed. The air was different. I could feel it for weeks. "I understand," I said. Just a quiet nod. Then I walked out. No yelling, no pleading, just quiet dignity. Back at my desk, the younger staff glanced up and then quickly buried their faces into their screens. Most of them were developers I'd trained myself, good kids. But they had no idea what was really holding the system together. They didn't know about the old architecture buried beneath all the shiny new platforms. They didn't know the software I'd custom written over years, or the deeply layered admin credentials only I understood. I began packing my things, my family photo, a mug my son made when he was in middle school, and a tiny succulent plant that somehow survived 17 years under fluorescent office lights. Just as I was unplugging my charger, Kate from marketing walked over. Her eyes were already watery. "Alex, I just heard. This is insane. You basically built this whole system." I gave a small shrug. Companies change directions. "But after everything you've done," she whispered. "No warning." I shook my head. I didn't have the energy to talk. "It's fine," I said quietly. But it wasn't fine. As I walked to the elevator, Daniel stepped out of his office and just watched. No handshake. No goodbye. Just making sure the discarded old guy actually left. What no one knew, what they had never bothered to notice, was that I'd quietly become the most critical person in that building. Not because I was some genius, just because I was meticulous. I documented everything. I'd set up security audit protocols years ago at the request of legal during a small internal scandal no one even remembered now, and I'd kept copies in my car. I sat in the car for a long minute just staring at the 12-story building where I'd spent most of my adult life. The security badge I'd just handed over had been renewed 16 times. My hand still had the imprint of it. Then I started the engine and drove home. They had no idea what Wednesday would bring. I'd joined Norbridge back when it was just a rented floor in a generic office park. My daughter Lily was in kindergarten back then. Now, she was in her final year of law school. I'd grown with the company, turned down multiple offers from competitors over the years because I believed in loyalty. My wife Rachel used to joke that the servers were my second family. She wasn't entirely wrong. I knew every system, every legacy patch, every ugly workaround that nobody dared touch because only I knew how to fix it. My hands had built the core infrastructure that survived mergers, CEO overhauls, even a ransomware scare in 2013 that could have tanked the company if not for a backup script I wrote on a whim 5 years prior. 5 years ago, Daniel took over as Chief Technology Officer. Fresh MBA, nice teeth. Talked a lot about efficiency and scaling and digital agility, all the usual buzzwords that meant one thing: more cuts, fewer humans. At first I tried to help. I really did. But every time I spoke up in meetings, Daniel would just look right past me and say, "We need to future-proof. like that was some kind of magic spell. Then came Jason Carlisle, the consultant, the golden boy, Stanford grad, firm handshake, tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Daniel brought him in 6 months ago to assess our digital infrastructure. I knew the type young ambitious, fluent in PowerPoint, but clueless about the roots of the system they were poking into. They started holding hush-hush meetings. I wasn't invited. I'd pass by the conference room and see the two of them huddled together sometimes, with Sophia from HR, sometimes with Brian, our CFO. I noticed small things at first: admin permissions, quietly shifting access levels adjusted here and there, my name disappearing from routine upgrade emails. I could have raised hell, but I didn't. Instead, I watched, and I documented. One night, sitting on the porch with Rachel, she noticed me staring into the distance. "You okay?" she asked, placing her hand over mine. "Something going on at work?" I took a sip of my beer, stared out into the quiet Iowa evening. "Just changes," I said, "but nothing I haven't seen before." But this felt different. Not evolution erasure. I was being methodically pushed to the sidelines. Then I found the memo. A company-wide modernization initiative never sent to me. Buried in a public folder, only accessible to a few departments. It outlined a total restructuring of IT leadership. Jason Carlisle would be taking over strategic operations. My name was nowhere on the chart. Not demoted, not moved, just erased. That same afternoon, while running one of the routine back-end scans nobody cared about anymore, I caught something. Unusual financial activity. Repeated transfers to a vendor I didn't recognize. Northwave Systems. Registered just last year. Business address, a P.O. box, at a UPS store in Omaha. At first it was small, a few $1,000s, but the amounts were increasing each month. I didn't confront anyone. I just made copies. Quietly. Thoroughly. Forensic screenshots. Approval chains. Timestamp logs. Sometimes, the quiet man in the corner sees everything because everyone assumes he sees nothing. The next morning, I didn't set an alarm. There was no need. No office to rush to. No traffic to fight through. Just silence thick and full of meaning. Rachel placed a cup of coffee on my desk, said nothing, and kissed the top of my head. After nearly 20 years together, she knew when to speak and when not to. When she left for the store, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a flash drive I'd kept for years. One of several, actually. Back in 2015, during a legal scare involving insider threats, I'd created a secure off-site audit system for Norbridge. The executive team had signed off on it, then promptly forgotten. I hadn't. I plugged it in. What I found wasn't just irregular, it was damning. 18 months of payments to Northwave Systems, nearly $1.9 million. The approval trail led directly to Brian Mathers, our CFO. The invoices were marked for software license renewals and infrastructure upgrades. But I recognized the formatting. They were templates recycled from legitimate vendors with minor changes. Amateur mistakes. Cross-checking state registration records. I uncovered the name listed as Northwave's owner, Samuel Mathers, Brian's brother. My chest tightened, but not with fear, not anymore. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system, a siphon built to blend in, bleeding the company while hiding in plain sight. Still, I said nothing, because silence had power. Because reaction is what they expected. And I had no intention of giving them what they expected. That afternoon, I got a text from Connor, a junior div I'd mentored for 2 years. "Tom, I just heard what happened. Absolute bulls." Carlisle's already moved into your office. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my email, drafted a message to Norbridge's board of directors, outlined the suspicious vendor, included a few carefully selected screenshots, just enough to rattle the cage, not enough to trigger full panic. Then I deleted the draft. Too early, too blunt. I needed precision, and I needed timing. Tomorrow was Wednesday, board meeting day, the day they reviewed quarterly financials and approved executive bonuses. Perfect. That night, I backed up every file to 3 separate encrypted drives. One stayed with me. One went into the safe deposit box at the bank. The third, well, I mailed that to my daughter Lily with instructions to only open if something happened to me. Not because I expected danger, but because paranoia was no longer a luxury. It was necessity. By morning, I was sitting in my car across the street from Norbridge HQ, laptop open on the passenger seat. At exactly 9:12 a.m., I logged into a ghost email I'd created years ago for internal penetration testing, designed to mimic Norbridge domains without actually being on record. At 9:15 a.m., I fired off my first move. Subject line urgent. Financial irregularities detected. Recipient Daniel Hart. Inside a brief summary of the Northwave Trail. No mention of Mather's brother. No mention of me. If Daniel was involved, he'd panic. If he wasn't, he'd investigate. Either way, I'd learn something. By 9:46, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. Tom, we need to discuss your email immediately. Please call me back. I didn't. At 10:12, a second email came in, this time from Sophia in HR. Mr. Branson, we've received communication from you that may constitute a violation of your separation agreement. Please cease all contact with Norbridge employees immediately. Any further communication may result in legal action. I almost laughed. I hadn't signed any separation agreement. Threats. Deflection. Classic. At noon, I walked into my local bank and accessed my safety deposit box. Inside was an older drive, one I hadn't touched in years. It contained the original source code for our internal security tools logs of who accessed what when, and more importantly, who requested changes. Right there, clear as daylight, was a record showing Brian Mathers requesting expanded financial access 18 months ago, right when Northwave was born. When I got home, I had 4 missed calls. Daniel, Sophia, Carlisle, and Brian. Interesting. Even more interesting. A message from Connor Tom. People are freaking out. Carlisle's called an emergency meeting. They're pulling access logs. What's happening? I replied with just 5 words. Don't get involved. Just watch. At 3:04 p.m., the house phone rang. That phone never rang. Not for years. I picked up. Tom, it's Brian. His voice was even, controlled, practiced. We need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I said, keeping my voice calm. Is that what you call it? I mean, transition periods are always challenging. If you have questions about company finances, there are proper channels, like the board. I'm aware of the channels, I said, pausing long enough to let the silence sting. But I don't think the board knows about Northwave Systems, or your brother. He inhaled sharply. You're making a serious mistake, he said finally. No, I replied. I think you already did. I can fix this. Generous severance, solid references, whatever you need. I need you to stop talking, I said, and hung up. Within 10 minutes, I got another email from HR, this one, with an attachment. A revised severance package. Double the amount. With a new clause demanding my complete silence on all company matters. They were scrambling. Still playing the game, like it was blackmail. They had no idea what was coming. That night, I barely slept. I wasn't anxious. I was focused. By dawn, I'd found the second thread. Buried in old vendor records from 3 years ago was another pattern, this time linked to a firm called Brookside Consulting. Large payouts, inflated invoices, little to no delivery documentation. Registered owner, Patricia Mathers. Brian's wife. Same playbook, different names. But it was the emails that broke it wide open. Emails between Brian and Daniel. Private unarchived threads I'd mirrored years ago during internal security audits. Lines like Brookside's been processed. Same structure as Northwave. Or Carlisle's finalizing the org chart. Once Tom's out, we're clean. And then there was Jason Carlisle, the consultant. Turns out his firm had bypassed standard procurement protocols. No bidding. No review. A direct placement approved by guess who, Brian. Jason wasn't hired to modernize anything. He was hired to eliminate the one person who could follow the trail. Me. They thought I was just a quiet tech guy, invisible. But they forgot that the guy who built the system also built the traps. I spent the next day assembling a report. Not just data, but evidence, vendor registration records, internal emails, payment timelines, screen captures. Every puzzle piece aligned into one unshakable picture of coordinated fraud. $4.3 million skimmed over 3 years. But I wasn't ready to hand it off to just anyone. I needed someone who'd listen. Someone with power and a conscience. His name was Martin Reed. Board member. Old school. Cautious, but sharp as hell. I'd worked with him during a security overhaul 7 years ago. He was one of the few who asked questions in meetings, so I called. He picked up on the second ring. Tom Branson, he said. Heard you left Norbridge. Not by choice, I replied. But I have something you need to see. Silence. Then this, about why Daniel and Brian looked like ghosts yesterday. Yeah, I said. That's part of it. We met in a park 6 miles outside downtown. I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside, a printed summary and a flash drive. I'm not looking for my job back, I told him. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want the truth to be known. Martin stared at the packet in his hands. The board's convening an emergency finance session tomorrow, he said. Convenient timing. I'm counting on it, I said. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Rachel. She sounded unsettled. Someone named Carlisle just showed up at the house, she said. Wanted to talk. I told him you were out. My chest tightened. Not fear. Resolve. They were desperate now. Good. That afternoon, I got 2 job offers, both from competitors, both with signing bonuses. Apparently, word had spread. I didn't reply. This wasn't about jobs. It was about principle. And tomorrow morning, everything changes. Thursday morning, 7:45 a.m. I sat in my car across from Norbridge headquarters. Coffee in hand, suit on, laptop open on the passenger seat. At exactly 8:00 a.m., an email left my outbox scheduled in advance. To every member of the board of directors. Subject, Q2 bonus approval. Read before voting attached. A comprehensive report detailing every dollar siphoned through Northwave Systems and Brookside Consulting. Emails, vendor registrations, access logs, the works. At 8:17, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers. Board assistants. Legal reps. I didn't answer a single one. By 9:00 a.m., the Emergency Finance Committee session began. By 9:32, I got a text from Ben, my old intern. Tom, the police are here. Brian and Daniel are in separate conference rooms. Carlisle looks like he's about to puke. What did you do? I didn't reply. They were exactly where they needed to be. At 10:00 a.m., I finally picked up a call. Mr. Branson, this is Dana Kessler, Norbridge Legal. We need you to come in immediately. I'm available by phone. This really requires no eye cut and firm but calm. Everything I know is in that report. Everything I have is backed up in multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me or my family, copies go to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 major news outlets. Silence. We take this very seriously, she said finally. Executives have already been placed on leave. We hope you'll cooperate further. I have. My part's done. I spent the rest of the day at a diner outside the city, watching headlines break. Norbridge, Technologies, executives under investigation. No names. Yet. But by 2:00 p.m., Martin called. It's a bloodbath, he said, without ceremony. Brian confessed after 10 minutes. Tried to throw Daniel under the bus. Daniel's denying everything. Carlisle is begging for immunity. The board's pissed and embarrassed. I said nothing. There's more, he continued. They want to offer you a job. I raised an eyebrow. Not your old one, Martin clarified. They want you as chief security officer, full exec status, reporting directly to the board. I hadn't seen that coming. I'll think about it, I said. That evening, I told Rachel everything. From the emails, to the backups, to the final click that blew it wide open. She didn't say much, just reached over and took my hand. So, what do you want now? She asked. For a long time, I didn't answer. I'd set out to expose the rot. I hadn't expected to rebuild what they tore down. But maybe this wasn't about going back. Maybe it was about building something better. That night, I posted one sentence on LinkedIn. Never burn bridges, just let them collapse under the weight of their own greed. Within minutes, messages started pouring in. The quiet guy from IT had brought down an empire. By Monday, everyone knew. And at 9:00 a.m. sharp, I walked into Norbridge headquarters wearing a suit I hadn't used in years. The front desk guy actually stood up when he saw me. Welcome back, Mr. Branson. I nodded, once stepped into the elevator, and rode to the executive floor. For the first time in 17 years. In the boardroom, the interim CEO stood to greet me. Mr. Branson. Thank you for coming. The scope of what you uncovered is, staggering. We've identified over $5.2 million in diverted funds. I said nothing. Martin cleared his throat. The board has voted unanimously to appoint you as CSO. Full oversight authority, budget independence, total access. I slid a folder across the table. Those are my conditions. She scanned the pages. Her eyes widened. Full audit rights. Veto power over IT spending. Your own external budget. Unusual, I asked. Yes, she admitted. But not as unusual as embezzling $5.2 million. Silence. You have until noon, I said, standing. I have other offers. By 11:47 they called. All conditions accepted. 6 months later, I sat in a corner office I never thought I'd earn. The view stretched across downtown Columbus. Brian Wilcox had pled guilty. Daniel was fighting charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. Carlisle fled to Brazil. He didn't get far. And Norbridge still standing, because someone finally started watching. Ben now ran the day-to-day tech team. I mentored him, like I wish someone had done for me. Rachel stopped by that afternoon. Lunch, she asked. I grabbed my jacket. As we walked through the department, heads turned not from fear, but from respect. They knew what I did. And they knew I could have burned it all down. But I didn't. Outside, the October sun was warm. My phone buzzed. Message from Martin Board. Approved your budget increase. Unanimous. Rachel smiled. Good news. I slid the phone back into my pocket. Just thinking about bridges, I said. Some collapse under their own weight. Others, I looked ahead. Some, if rebuilt, right become stronger than ever.